on the Recyard, women's prison podcast, where we are live on the Recyard every Wednesday night. Hello, everyone. We are live on the Recyard, women's prison podcast. It is Wednesday night. We're so happy to see you guys, you all. It's our favorite night of the week.
It really is. It really is.
And it just seems like this week has flown by. I'm surprised it's Wednesday again already.
Oh my God, Marci, it's Wednesday already? Because we had a holiday Monday. Maybe that's why it feels so fast.
Maybe so. I think we have a great show tonight. We're talking about unrealistic expectations, not just expectations that others put on us with getting out of prison, but that we put on ourselves. And yeah, I'm anxious to talk about that. Department of Corruption stories coming in hot, reminding everybody to hit that thumbs up button. If you're watching on your phone, tap that screen. Thank you so much, Carrie, for liking. Carrie, tap that screen. The screen.
Toonchi. That's all I'm saying is just make sure you tap it.
We all know what you meant. We all know what you meant by that. Carrie, you're a rock star. Thank you so much for already liking and sharing the live. Kim, we see you. Welcome in. Welcome in. Toonch, before we get started, let's do this. Let's do a weekly recap. I just want you to stop texting and think about the show for a moment.
Whoa. I'm trying to get all of the places shared. That's what I'm always doing.
Okay. Well, that if it's podcast stuff and not you talking to somebody else, then we'll accept that. Did you love the picture I put on our Facebook page this week?
Oh, wait. The picture, the very good picture of you and the fourth of my face, my eyeball.
Yes, it's my favorite picture of us.
Yeah. Now, you didn't tell people the real story behind that picture. Do you remember what it was?
Why we were taking it?
Uh-huh.
Because we were trying to get a shot of someone in the background, which I clipped them out of the picture. We just were trying to, we were being messy.
We were real messy. And let me tell you something. Marci has taught me how to, and I showed Lori the other day, I believe, that the best way to get a picture when you don't want people to know is that you taught me, you pretend you're doing a selfie and you're taking a picture of someone they don't know.
Or if there's a lot of mess going on behind you, but you don't want to crank your neck and be obvious, then you just get your camera out. And you act like you're doing something with your camera, but really you're inspecting behind you. It's a trick. It's a hack. It's a life hack. Mm-hmm. Joe Carlini, welcome in, watching from LinkedIn. Happy to have you. So we talk about women's prisons because we were locked up in Texas women's prisons. Fortunately, we are grateful for the community of all types of folks. We have women, girls, men, gender expansive folks that are part of our community, and everyone's welcome. We love feedback and questions. So if you have something for us, shoot it at us. Tonight, we're talking about unrealistic expectations, but we're supposed to do a weekly recap.
Yeah. So what are you doing?
I don't know. I don't know what happened. We talked about the picture. Well, that was part of the weekly recap. I'm just really proud of that picture.
It's a great picture. It really is. But let's talk about the week. It was a holiday weekend. I didn't do a whole lot, didn't get work done that I wanted to do. I got sick, and it was not pleasant. But recovered yesterday a little bit towards the end there. And so I guess I didn't do a whole lot, but coming up tomorrow is our online storytelling training at TAVP, and then an in-person one on Saturday. But Marci, you've got something coming up Saturday.
I do. I see Lori Mellinger in the comments. She didn't blame you for being late, Lori. And she usually does. So I'm proud of you.
You're
I feel like that's personal growth.
I'm trying to do better and be better for now,
Yeah,
for today, just for today, as we
just
say in
for
recovery, just
yeah,
for today.
just for today. We do have exciting things coming up. I'm trying to think what happened last week, but I guess just work. No, so this weekend we will be in San Antonio for a training by All of Us or None of Us, and we have a 1 day training, and then we have a formerly incarcerated persons march. All of Us or None of Us was gracious enough to get us lodging and feed us, and I think it's going to be a great time. There's a lot of Lioness folks showing up and showing out there, and I'm really excited for us to represent our organization and be in community with other formerly incarcerated folks. Yeah, I think it's great. Kate Ashley, we see you. Thanks so much for joining. Amanda, we see you too. And goodness, Joe says he was incarcerated since the age of 13. So Toonchi was incarcerated as a youth as well, not quite as young as 13. And we certainly have a lot of our friends that were incarcerated as youth, and that's no joke for sure. Mama Sean. Hi, Mom. We see Lee, Shaquille Oatmeal. You guys hit that like button for us, and we will jump right into unrealistic expectations. Tunchi, Tunchi, how are we starting this off?
So, first, I want to say anybody that's been in SafeP or in prison therapeutic community or any type of cognitive intervention, classes or therapy. I don't know what it's called in other spaces, but it's called a thinking error. It's one of these things that well, I mean, it's always been called a thinking error in the spaces I've been in. So these are things that kind of distort our thinking, and that shapes the way that we view the world, and it's coping skills too, like blaming other people for your problems, manipulation, silent treatment, and all these different maladaptive coping skills. And one of those thinking errors, Marcy, if you remember, well, I don't know, y'all were during the COVID thing, but you probably remember seeing or reading unrealistic expectations. So what does that mean to you?
Unrealistic expectations means my first thought is my expectations of other people. I expect sometimes folks to act the way that I would or that I think they should, and realistically, I have no control over that. And that might be like the textbook safe P answer. This When I thought about it for this show, I thought about the things that I just thought were going to be for me, like, oh, I'm not going to be depressed anymore when I get out of prison. I'm not that my anxiety is going to go away when I get out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
And that absolutely was completely false. I mean, just couldn't be about. I see that look. You guys be nice in this comment. This is not that kind of show, Brian Willis. So in the comment section, we see you. I'm not going to highlight your comment. um yeah, but that's what unrealistic expectations is. That I think some folks are like, okay, I'm going to be able to work at this place. I know that I'm going to go here, and that doesn't work out. Or I'm going to be happy.
Right.
And happiness, freedom and happiness, those are two different things. They don't freedom doesn't automatically mean you're happy just because now you're not incarcerated.
You're right. And I wanted to pull up maybe maybe some other definitions that really highlight what we're talking about, right? Because unrealistic expectations of ourselves and others, right? Like um, those expectations we set for ourselves or others that are highly improbable or unattainable. They often stem from societal pressures, comparison, or idealized notions of perfection, right? Like, so it's this very idealistic vision of what we are expecting from other people and ourselves. And let's do that. Let's start with what you're talking about. These unrealistic expectations of ourself when we're incarcerated. And what you said is so true. I remember my unfortunate second stint, 10 years, after I'd been out a while. I remember people just talking about freedom and parole and being released as the magic key to everything. And I said, let me tell you something. That is not the answer. You're walking from one prison almost into another kind of prison, like from society. And it doesn't make everything go away. It doesn't. It brings on a whole bunch of other problems. And even now, people that call me, and probably you experience this too, is they kind of shame me or try to shame me or get really angry with me when I have problems or I'm sad or I'm not feeling good or I'm just hanging out at the house watching TV with the cat. And they're like, well, why aren't you doing this? And why are you sad? You're free. You're free. And it's like, baby, you have some very unrealistic expectations about freedom.
Freedom does not mean that your mental health struggles end. Like you don't just all of a sudden, you're not just all of a sudden healed
Right.
from whatever was going on prior to your incarceration that maybe led to your incarceration, and certainly not from the trauma that incarceration caused. Kate Ashley says, when I got out, I found out that I was quite depressed and people didn't like that and told me, get over it. You're out now. And that made her feel even worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I can relate to that. There's this idea that not only we put on ourselves, but just like you're saying, Toonchi, other people put that on too, like, oh, but everything's better now, except it's not all better. It didn't work like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you come home, right, your loved ones, and especially those of us that did a long time, you're coming back in the world and your family and loved ones, even if they came to see you sometimes, it's just different. And so they have these expectations of you that are just they're completely unrealistic. And I don't mean just in go get a job right now and be able to do these functional things day to day. But I think too, these expectations of, okay, well, I'm not a child anymore, right? Like I'm an adult. I have my own feelings, and it is not reasonable to think that I'm going to live the life that you want me to live now that I'm free, right? And that was tough navigating that. Did you experience any of that with your relationships when you got home?
Well, I think there was a lot of my personality is one that I get things done, maybe. And I've always been I think a go-to person for my family, especially because I have the kids. I have one sibling who his children are four-legged, and I have five babies. So everything with them while I was gone, my parents and everybody trying to manage how they're going to see the kids and this. And that was something that was said a lot. Well, when you get home, all that will be better. Like when you get home, you'll take care of that. There was a situation. I had an uncle that was in active addiction, and that was even kind of brought up. Like, well, we know when you get home, And I think that some of that unrealistic expectations. Yes, when I got home, it was better, but it wasn't fixed. Like all of a sudden now I still don't get to see my daughters, and we don't get to see them near as much as we want to. Now, is it easier on my parents? and my grandmother, trying to see them? Yes, because they're not having to navigate that. They're just getting the fruits of my navigating it, right? And so in a way that was helpful, but it adds a little bit of stress, or it adds a little bit of anxiety. And then just another thing that came to mind, which is so minor, I think that our families and loved ones on the outside, they have things in their mind that, oh, okay, when she gets home, this I vision this and this and this with her, and all of that's going to happen. And the fact is, some of those things I was absolutely not ready for.
Mhm.
Like just small things, like my grandmother had, she my first few days home had set her laptop with like the slideshow of all the pictures that I had missed. I was gone for 10 years. My kids grew up 10 years worth of growth with me gone. And that's really hard to hit. Like that was a tough thing to process. And she was not understanding that I couldn't watch that yet. Like that's
Mhm.
I can't go there yet. And I still sometimes I can take one or two pictures, but I can't sit down and look through a whole uh, because it just it hurts my soul so much, and I think that that was something in her mind. It was, oh, I'm doing this for her and she's going to love this. And I was not. So I think that there was an unrealistic expectation from her. And I
Yeah.
think it's important, and she handled that. My my grandmother, I will say she handled it, I think, graciously for her personality, but I think it's important for us to remember that, not just with folks coming out of incarceration, but you just never know what someone might be thinking or feeling at a certain time, and it's okay if they're not reacting the way that you in your
Right.
mind envisioned.
Yeah.
That's okay, right?
Gosh, Marcy, and again, everybody knows I'm a daddy's girl and I love my daddy. He's My dad is just complicated, right? Like, so he's just complicated. But I remember the first time I got out, and I'd been locked up since I was a kid, and that was 10 years. And girl, when I got into that truck and they told us, don't hug, get in the truck and get out, right? And so there's no time to even process that. Get in the vehicle and leave.
This is when you left the penitentiary.
Yes, for that first time. And we went to Walmart and I'm freaked out. I'm freaked out. Like, you envision this day, and all I was freaked out, like just overwhelmed completely. And so I remember being in the back of the truck, and my parents were so happy. They were so excited. They were telling me stuff and pointing stuff out to me, and I am totally overwhelmed to the point of tears. And here's this weird thing, Marcy. I remember looking at all the houses and the trailers and the little wooden shacks. It's out in the country all the way to back to East Texas. And I remember, this will sound terrible, but I remember, like, wait a minute, why does everything look like this? Like, it was like I just had this shiny version of what I was going to expect to see, and I'm seeing real life. And I remember my dad was like trying to get me to laugh or do something, and because he's not good with his feelings, right? Or wanting me to be happy and responsive in this moment, and I'm not, and I don't think he knew how to handle it. So he does what my dad does. He turns around and starts beating on the back of the seat and says, "Hey, fucking snap out of it." Right? Like, oh, that's gonna help. And I know it was because he was getting stressed and freaked out and confused himself. Like, why isn't she happy? Like, because there was this very unrealistic expectation that this was going to be this carefree, joyful moment, and it was not. I was extremely stressed out, and I myself was confused about that. And I knew all of this the second time I got out, right? Because remember, I did that second 10 years, and I knew, Jennifer, because I learned some hard lessons that first time. People are different. My brother was different. My best friend Melissa was different. They've had 10 years of life experiences that I don't understand, like as adults dealing with trauma and all of their stuff. So I knew the second time, Marci, I was like, I'm going to keep a very realistic vision of the people I left behind. And when I get home, I'm just going to remember, they're not who they were. Things are different. Girl, that went right out the window. All them girls I fantasized, I'm not going to say girls. Maybe it was more than one, but it wasn't like 10 or something. But all these people that I had these very intense previous romantic relationships that I wanted to see again. And I wanted to say hello because for life experiences, I hadn't been able to. And I romanticized that, right? Like we talked about, like idealized that. Honey, it was a big shock when I interacted with those people again. They were totally different. And that was hard for me. It feels like like grieving. It feels like a death. It feels like when your expectations are not met, it's like grief.
It is when you have built something up in your mind, and in prison, you have a lot of time to replay the scenarios, you know, and when that doesn't happen, it is a form of, it's a letdown, and so maybe you grieve what you thought was going to happen.
Right. Did you ever do this? Because this is what I would do on the weekends were the toughest for me, especially when we didn't have staff for rec and activities. So you're just in your cubicle. Um, and so on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, I don't really nap, but I would lay there with my headphones on and just think and have my little daydreams, my little fantasies, and all this other stuff. And of course, there are fantasies and thoughts and expectations that get me through the day, that get me through the weekend, that get me through another year, and this hope and this, like, I don't know, I've always been like striving for some type of romantic Romeo Juliet kind of love thing, right? And like, I'm just going to get out and things are going to be just all this expectation. Even with, we all know, even with my pen pal, who I developed such a close relationship with, you talk about some unrealistic expectations when I got home.
From
And
both
she,
sides.
from both sides, and for her to tell me, you love the version of me that you created in your head. That hurt. And I'm sure that hurt her, right? And I've worked on that to see her in her true self and her true light, to be able to have a more authentic relationship. But I did that with everybody.
Did you meet her through a pen pal site?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Brian Willis is asking about, and definitely lots of incarcerated folks have pen pals, and we know someone that married her pen pal, and have a very happy marriage, successful life together. So it definitely does happen. I was thinking about relationships, about people that you meet in prison
Oh,
and how that happens also. You know, my wife and I, which I met my wife while we were both incarcerated, and we knew that we were going to test the waters when I got home and see how we were together out here. You know, you never really know. I think that you know people that you're in prison with on a whole different level, and even I think the bond is stronger than people that you meet out here. However, you don't know how they are in the free world and how they're
right.
going to act in the free world,
Right.
because so, you know, and I think that happens also. Uh, you never know how that's gonna carry over, and my wife and I had to just almost we just kind of met each other again, if that makes sense. We
Yeah.
we learned each other in a whole different beautiful way. But I think that when you're in prison, you just think, oh, it's going to be this love story and it's going to be so easy and simple, the and then you get out here, and then there's families and jobs and rent and pets and kids, and it's not whatever you thought about it
Right.
there. It is definitely not.
It's not, right? And I think that's, to me, the biggest conflict with family and friends when you get home. Now, I'm not talking about toxic family and friends that you really need boundaries or to be away from. I'm just talking about, they're pretty healthy. They supported you and they went through this journey with you. And I think the really honestly, the biggest barrier there are unrealistic expectations of everybody, right? And my family's expecting me to cope with things and be over stuff, and I'm not. I'm expecting this person I was so madly crazy about and had these ideas of, guess what, she's her own person with her own stuff that I never knew about, right? And like, am I taking this out on her, that she's not living up to the fantasy I created in my head, the same way maybe my loved ones did that, you know, they just expected me to be somebody that I'm not. And those are painful, those disappointments. And I think, Marci, some of the unrealistic expectation is expecting, like you said, for someone to behave in the way that you want them to behave. And how realistic is that when perhaps even this person has never behaved like that to begin with? So you're wanting something from somebody that they do not have access to.
I think that that happens for certain, in relationships, especially relationships that you have going into the system, be it romantic or whatever. You already know this person's character, and you know their habits, and so why would you now think all of a sudden it was all going to change?
It's just suddenly going to not be that way anymore.
Right, right, yeah, no, for sure.
It's
I
going to
had a
be different this time, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I think that maybe that leads people back into um, old behaviors, right? Like, well, the pattern has shown me that this has not ever worked. But you know what? I think it'll be different. It's like me when I eat onions. I'm like, oh, it's fine. Lori's like, that's going to hurt your stomach, and you know it. No, this time it'll be different. I just feel like it will. And it's not. It's not.
Back to kind of the pen pals and unrealistic expectations there. SE's watching from YouTube. Thank you for joining us. And they're saying letter writing alone is romantic. In previous comments, they let us know that they do have they do write someone that's incarcerated. That person shares more intimate emotions than people in your physical world would share. Uh, so
Yeah.
again, I think that you can get a closer bond maybe through that. And in fact, through letter writing, I was incarcerated with my wife, but we didn't live in the same dorm. And we were writing letters back and forth. That was our main way of communicating with each
Right.
other.
Well, and I think when you have, and whether it's your pen pal letters or maybe you're writing a loved one, because there were several people that wrote me frequently that weren't, romantic. It was just other loved ones, but there's something there that was always, it's easier to talk about feelings, it's easier to talk about memories and to process stuff. So again, unrealistic expectation. I come out here thinking that kind of communication was still going to happen. And for me, it will, because I'm very much an open book. Even if I get real intense, I can process my feelings out loud. I don't mind talking about stuff. I enjoy it, right? And then I discovered that these people that I was so close to me, they suddenly are closed up like a book. And I'm like, I don't understand. Wouldn't you be like excited to now continue to develop this closeness that was already there. And it was like, no, it felt safer when you were just in my mailbox. And it was like, I, that's so foreign to me, right? Like I never understood that. And sometimes that's still hard for me because then I feel, because I have BPD and I'm crazy. I hate to use the word crazy. Sorry, it's just slang. Then I'm like, oh, so you lied to me, right? So you tricked me. Oh, so you just pretended and none of this was real and all this stuff. And I've had to work through that, Marci, to be like, Jennifer, there's things are not so black and white, right? Like it may very much have been that in that moment, that may have been true, but in this context, this person is not comfortable. It's not you. It's just things change. That's hard. That's hard.
And there is something that makes you bolder, I think, when you're not face to face with those face to face relationships. And possibly people that haven't been incarcerated, we move fast in there
Oh, yeah.
with friendships, relationships. The bonding experience is very fast when you are living in the same room, eating in the same room, working together, going to rec together, showering together. Your relationships, be it friendships, play sisters, play mamas, that happens quickly. It's much different than out here when you meet someone and you hang out for an afternoon and then you call in a couple days and then you might see each other Friday night.
Right.
And so I think that we're kind of used to that speed of bonding and speed of getting into that intimacy, and then it's not the same for folks that haven't moved as quick as us in that aspect.
Right. Well, and two, it's not the same because 10 years have passed, right? I remember, man, I was just, and it wasn't fair to her. I just had this very idealized version, this romanticized. It got me through. You know what I mean? It gave me something to live for, the way I felt about her. And it was real, but she's not the person she was 10 years ago, Jennifer. Like it's like we've been put on pause, right? Like time stands still and those memories stand still and people in the world are having all these life experiences. And it's like it feels like you are just suddenly right back where you left off. And that's not true for any of us. And we all, I think, subconsciously do that, and it was it was hard. Change is hard. And I think that's where unrealistic expectations are, is that things don't change. And they
What
do.
about expectations that you put on yourself?
Oh yeah, right. You're right, because things, not only do we get in relationships fast, that we see that with girls coming out now, and we're like, oh girl, slow down a little bit, right? Because the expectation that I'm gonna get out, I'm gonna get a job, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna get an apartment, I'm gonna do this, and then like, okay, that's true, but it's not gonna happen in 3 weeks, right? And the joy of release wears off pretty quickly after the bubble baths and the pizza and the going out to eat, the realities of life. And I think that was, who said that earlier? Somebody asked the question of Crystal did, what are realistic expectations? What does that look like, Marci?
Yeah, I mean, realistic expectations are that you're going to be told no a lot because of your background. Unrealistic or realistic expectations, you can realistically expect getting out of prison to I've put my life on such public display getting out of prison that I feel like mine aren't going to be the same for everybody. But for people to openly say disgusting comments to you, you know, I don't know. I think just that there is still a percentage of society that has a large disdain for anybody with a felony background and very little understanding of how our criminal legal system works in this country. So you need to be realistic in knowing that you are going to be faced with obstacles and barriers behind that.
Yeah.
Um,
That there's challenges, that there's still freedom, like you said earlier, is not the answer to everything. It presents itself with all these new challenges. You know, even me, as I've tried to navigate things through that realistic lens. Um, I remember when I was looking for somewhere to live in Austin, and I was really, I don't deal with a lot of people outside of our advocacy circles, for better or worse, right? But for the most part, people understand, nobody's treating each other crazy in our sphere because of our backgrounds. Now, we might have personality disagreements and conflicts, but nobody's doing that, right? And to step out of that bubble into the real world, I don't know what else to call it, but to look for a place to live and to have like adamantly not no but hell no
yes.
over and over, like 3 times the deposit, like here's my references. And I remember one time leaving a place and there was a rat tail in the parking lot. I'm serious, this long, pretty thick. And this landlord had talked crazy to me. And I'm like, are you serious? And this is the type of apartments that you run? And I was so caught off guard because I had some very unrealistic expectations of the rest of the world, because I live in a space where I'm not treated like that. I found a community that's not going to treat me like, but you're right, the rest of the world is going to.
Yeah, it definitely happens. I want you all to see in the comment section, there's lots of questions too. And so in about 5 or so minutes, I want to just answer some of the questions. So I see your questions, folks. I think Lee, Brian, a few others have asked some questions. I promise we'll get to them at the end. So 5 or 10 minutes from now, we'll answer some questions. I also was just thinking about how and I don't know if this fits in with the topic, but I certainly thought of it right now. And it was when I completely stereotyped someone at a fancy gala that I was attending with a legislator. And the gala was put on by an organization that helps formerly incarcerated folks. And anyway, I had I'm looking for you. If you have done time and we're in the room together, I want you're my friend and we need to connect and I need that I need you to ground me if we're in a room with a lot of people. I search for that, and that was this situation. There was not a lot of formerly incarcerated folks. And I don't know that there was any except for the one that that hosted the gala actually. Anyway, so I see this guy and they have a bar and I'm going to get water or whatever, and there's a guy and a lady that he has with him, and he's got, or she has him with her however it was, but he is tatted up and he's buff. Like, some guys, when they get out, that's how they look because they've spent a lot of time working out. And those tats, frankly, looked like they could have been prison tats, like really good ones. And I was like, oh, okay, my people. There's my people there. And so I'm like, so did you do time? And he says, no, I'm here with my wife. She's a lawyer for such and such law firm. And I was like, oh, so nice to meet you. So nice to meet you both. Thank you for coming to support. I'm just like, there were no convicts there, and I was looking for my people, and I felt out of place, and I think that that's most of the time. The average person getting out of prison is not surrounded by formerly incarcerated people like we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And the idea that the community for better or worse, again, on the inside that supported us, you get used to that. And then you come home and that's not here. I mean, that's why we created Lion, is to try to to duplicate that, to try to bring that community feel out here, as a landing space, right? Because I don't, I was not prepared, nor was I expecting that when I got out to feel so isolated and so lonely. And I'd been out before, but I was younger then, and I was a lot of boom boom, and I also didn't have an ankle monitor on that kept me, at the house, and um, that caught me off guard. I didn't expect to be as depressed as I was. I didn't expect to have, you know, looking up all the old friends that what in the world happened while I was gone. And it just was so, I just had lived in another world in my head to get through my time, and nothing was turning out as I expected. Getting on that monitor, that that killed any expectations I had previously, right? And so, well, what do I do now? And if and it's like I never want to like damage people's hope, because having hope on the inside for things is what gets you through. But I know what unrealistic expectations and hope did to me in a detrimental way, that I want people to avoid that. That is a crushing feeling, right? To not have something that you hoped for, whether it's a relationship or a job or money or whatever, right? So, but you can curtail that by having, let's get rooted in reality, right? Like, let's keep our hope, let's keep our goals, but let's give this, um, a more realistic view of how the world really is. And maybe we can plan better, and that way we don't have that kind of disappointment.
And I think that that disappointment causes a lot of folks to fall in back into some of their old habits that they didn't want to fall into, because they're trying to move too fast, trying to, and I think that, and not that everybody has such time. Like I had a lot of grace with all of that, because of my family, but we have to give ourselves grace, in looking for the job, and uh, yeah, be expected to be told no. I mean, my sweet wife was so many doors closed in her face over this past 3 years. It's not even funny, and not we don't even think all of it. All of it might not even been the background. I believe some of it might be because, uh, we, uh, because we live in kind of a smaller, more rural community, and she is a mask presenting lesbian woman,
Right.
so she's had lots of doors, close in her face over that.
Well, in
So,
Marcy, I think people see our success right now, right? You and me and our friends and our group, and Brittany just getting a job that is so much like what she hoped and envisioned, and just like people see that and they're like, okay, well, I want that too. And it's like, honey, but you didn't see the past 5 years, right? Like you're just seeing the outcome right now. And you don't know what the past 5 years have looked like. Those first 2 years being home were two of the hardest years of my life, including the first time when I got out. They were hard, and then building and building. It took time, it's how we've created our organization. Time and pressure, that's a line from Shawshank Redemption, right? Like it's time and pressure, meaning it's chipping away at it. Time, like you have to be patient. And I think unrealistic expectations are directly linked to impatience. And the things that have gone well, and being realistic, you have to understand that things take time. There's not instant gratification. If you're looking for instant gratification, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment.
yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Robin is asking about a question that she asked last week, and we did promise we would answer this week. And I asked Robin, will you type it out again for us so we can put it across the screen? Since that was a comment that happened on a live stream, I couldn't pull it up very quickly with
I
the last
think
show.
that it had something to do with how did we feel about people with their assign. I'm not sure transgender being housed in facilities that were not their birth sex, and Marci was like, "That doesn't happen in Texas." Do you remember that now?
I think so too. I think so too. Robin confirmed that. And Toonchi, if you're ready to get to some questions, or if you have any final thoughts, because I don't want to just move in, but my distracted self saw that comment
I know.
from
Well,
Robin. And
we
so,
just have a lot of questions tonight.
yeah, we do have a lot of questions, so I want to give space for that because we sure appreciate you guys hopping. We appreciate all of y'all joining. I mean, you guys are a family community here, and we absolutely love this time with you, and we definitely want to get to questions. I do want to say, Randolph Adams, where are you located that you have jobs available? Randolph is a faithful listener, and we're happy to see you back also. And so, if you have jobs that hire formerly incarcerated people, give us the dirt on it. Give us the yeah. And Robin said that is about how do we feel about transgender people assigned at say it the right way too.
Oh, like like Robin, are you saying like how would we feel about a transgender woman incarcerated in a women's prison?
So someone that was assigned male at birth.
Right. So they would have to be fully transitioned and actually have their identity and their name and their all of that would have to be completely transitioned to female to be on a female unit
In Texas.
in Texas where we were. And there were, I knew many
Mhm.
that were. We also knew many people who were, I don't know what the term is, it the correct political term for it or the true term for it. As a not asexual, but like both sexes, right? Like genetically and identity. Um, it just depended on what was ever on their birth certificate. That's where they were being housed. And I don't. We had someone. Do you remember this?
Did you
Got real
freeze or
with us
me?
about nobody froze, honey. Did
Well, then
you?
it happened on my end.
So did you? You just it glitched the simulation. The matrix glitched.
Yeah,
Um,
possibly. So tell me, do you remember what? Because it
oh,
did
the
freeze on
lady
my end.
the lady that reached out to Linus and really tried to give us the business about supporting transgender people and how dangerous that is for vulnerable women in prison. We were like, girl, boo, get out of here. As a favorite advocate of mine says, if you didn't squat and cough with us, you don't get to tell us anything about our experience. And never, ever did I feel threatened or uncomfortable or weirded out with transgender people living with me or in a bathroom
No.
or it's just
Or
that's
was there ever any issue, right? I was
never.
really surprised to come home and see that that was such an issue out here about trans people. What bathroom do they use? Trans da, da, da. We were sharing cells and bathrooms and showers with transgender men or transgender women that were assigned men at birth, and it meant nothing to us. They were just there with us. So, and Department of Corrections, you're asking a detailed question. I'm not sure if you are in the transitioning phase before getting locked up. I think in Texas you have to be. Well, I know this. If you are assigned male at birth and you have already had top surgery done and you now have breasts, but you haven't had bottom surgery done, you are going to the men's facility because guys tell me that are locked up that is the case. Um, But yeah, so I'm not sure, like female wise, I don't know
Yeah,
in a female
I've never
prison. Mm-mm, haven't encountered that either. And
there
Kim says the right term, hermaphrodites, and she's right. I remember that now. If you have both genetic parts, is that correct?
I don't think we use that term anymore.
We don't. So maybe it's we are you Googling it?
Yeah.
Please do, because I don't want to offend anybody. But we did have that we did have some folks on in our unit that had both genetically had some of
It's
both
intersex. That's correct.
intersex.
It's
Okay.
intersex.
Okay.
That's a kind of an acquainted word that we don't use anymore, but it's intersex. Someone that's born with both sex organs. And some of the people I knew that were intersex did not know till late in life that they were, right? Because they just had ovaries that they just never had a period. Or they only had one ovary and they actually had an inverted testy.
Thank you for that question, Robin. We appreciate you supporting the show. Thanks so much for joining and listening and all the good things. Brian Willis is asking, did we have our own cells or was it one big room with everyone in it? Both.
Well, just depend.
Yeah. Both.
Marci lived in a lot of cell blocks because she was a bad girl. What they would call a bad girl. Toonchi lived in the dorms because she was an undercover bad girl that didn't get caught.
Because she manipulated the system.
Oh, girl, boo. My therapist says that manipulation is a maladaptive coping skill. So I just was using what I had developed through trauma.
Yeah, so both. There's basically three types of housing in Texas prisons in general. And the first type is dorm setting that has bunk beds. So several bunk beds in one big room. The next one is cubicle style housing in one big room, a bunch of cubicles, which are like office cubicles, except only half walls. So it would still just be low to the ground, the walls would be, and you have a little bed in that cubicle space. And then the third one would be cell block housing. Some of those cells are 2-man cells, and some of those cells, like solitary confinement cells, are 1-man cells. And I've lived in all of those housings. So do you see another, I know there was more questions early on, so I'm not sure. Lee watching from YouTube, we appreciate you, says, and I think Lee's watching from, I think it was a Canadian flag up there. I'll double check. They should teach life skills to help better prepare incarcerated folks when they will be released and not end up back in prison. And absolutely, like real life skills. And you're absolutely right. There's one that maybe offers women that has real life skills to an extent, but it offers such a small percentage of the women. But what are you seeing?
Well, I was just wondering did we answer Brian's questions about do you think pen pals are a scam?
Well, go for it. We didn't answer flat out. We just said, yes, people have pen pals. Pen pal sites, I don't think are a scam. I've never come across a site that said, hey, here's an incarcerated person for $20. You can get all these names and addresses. I've never come across any backlash in all of the prison forums I'm in for family, friends, and formerly incarcerated people. I've never heard them say, like, look at this site, it's a fake, it's a fraud. Yeah. So I think that that's probably safe, those sites. Now, the people that you might be writing might run game on you. That happens. It happens. We've seen all of that. We have seen people make true and valuable connections with one another through pen pals. We have seen people enter into romantic, real feelings and real romantic relationships through pen pals. And we have seen people run complete game on their pen pals to try to get money, and that happens all the way around.
Yeah, and Lee was mentioning Gypsy Rose, full of drama, left her husband after only 3 months out of prison. Then she's back together with the boyfriend she met through pen pals. A lot of men were writing her because of her fame. Yeah, a lot of if you have a high profile case, yeah, you're going to get a lot of outside mail just because people are morbidly curious, or maybe they just genuinely are like, I feel so touched by what happened to you, or whatever. Now,
Snapped, First
yeah,
48,
yeah,
those
we know a
those
lot of those women on there, and I think this is a picture of that we all knew when when we saw on social media Gypsy Rose had dumped her husband and got a divorce and was like, I'm not doing this. I can't even tell you how many women I know did that. That they married some guy, whether it was someone they had known a long time ago, whether it was a pen pal, married while they were incarcerated, got out, and it lasted about 3 months. That's why I told somebody currently locked up, I said, you know, I do love you, and I think that when we were together, we were one of the best girlfriends I ever had. In terms of just our personalities. And I said, but girl, I'm not fixing to do that with you right now. Not no, but hell no. And I wouldn't do it with you for at least 2 years after you got out. Well, that's messed up. Why? I said, because I already know how it goes. Because those expectations, you get into the free world, you're gonna be like a feral wild animal for a little bit. Um, you know, just exploring and adjusting and all your stuff you're going through. I'm not fixing to set myself up for that. I'm not doing that. And so I wasn't surprised. Were you surprised when Gypsy divorced her husband?
No, not at all. I think there's also, and I don't know that this is the case of Gypsy Rose's relationship, but I think there's a lot of folks looking to write incarcerated people, not necessarily out of, hey, I want to make a connection with someone, but hey, I want to be the hero. I am the savior. They need me. They rely on me for everything. And
Yeah.
then they get out of prison and, oh, they need me for those first couple weeks. And then guess what? People are independent and have their own thoughts and their own feelings and their own needs. And that's unexpected. And I don't know that that's what happened to Gypsy Rose, but it kind of seemed like it did because she came out of prison and incarcerated. You're very vulnerable to everything. And she didn't show much vulnerability coming out. She pretty much just came out with, I don't want to, I mean, I'm saying a vengeance, but I don't mean it in a negative way. I just mean like, bam, I'm here. And I don't know that, I
I'm
think
not
that
sure. Yeah.
happened.
I'm not sure her husband was ready for that, right? Because, you know, I saw that happen with a couple other friends that married when they were vulnerable to some pen pals and former officers. And then when they got out, I remember one friend was like, "Girl, I can't do this. He. Why are you doing this? Where are you going?" And I'm looking cute in my clothes. I'm feeling myself. I'm trying to acclimate to the world. I want to go see my friends. And he just had me in a bubble where he was everything. It was my focus was him, nobody else. And now I have other friends and other things, and he's tightening his control on me. And I will not do this. And I saw that playing out pretty quickly. Um, you know, I like Gypsy, and I'm not real happy to hear that she's going to be on the Kardashian show and her and Kim are friends because she's a Swiftie, and I don't know how that's even what the fuck. Like,
I I don't knock it. And Kim's got some things going on for prison reform, and just let them quit rolling your eyes over there, Toonch. She's got a little thing going on. Let them live their Kardashian life, their best Kardashian life. And
I look, I appreciate those efforts. I appreciate elevating some criminal justice pieces of reform. But I just don't understand. As a Swiftie, Gypsy said she's that big of a Swiftie. Now, of course, Taylor is never going to be within 50 feet,
yeah.
right? Just because of her PR machine. But, you know, you can't
I
say
did
that you're
see,
a
I
Swiftie.
want to
You
say,
go on the Kardashians. Who does that? You just can't, Gypsy. Just
well,
can't.
she
You
is.
can, but
You can, and you can, and she is. You can't tell Gypsy what to do with her
you
life.
keep my wife's name out your mouth.
I did see a thing, I think it was on TikTok that said it had a picture of Gypsy Rose, and it was like, the whole world believes that she's the victim, And I was like, what are they fixing to say bad about her? And so I swipe, and the next picture is, but they were the monsters. And it was the Menendez brothers, and how different the times have changed. And because they are men or boys, right? Like they were victimized their entire childhood. And then when they turned around and did something, they were monsters. We didn't see them as victims anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
world didn't. But Gypsy, you know. So free the Menendez brothers. Any final thoughts, Tooch?
Well, I wanted to say, did you
Do you see
highlight?
something else?
No, I was just saying, sometimes you highlight stuff and I don't see it while I'm talking, and I just wanted to say hi to Coretta because I saw that she came in.
Did she?
She
I missed
did.
it.
Girl, are you not watching the comments?
Well, I was scrolling through. I see. I was scrolling through to see if there was any back questions. Coretta, we love you. Thanks for coming in.
I do want to say, because she left this comment about I don't know if she wants me to highlight it or
I
not, but
highlighted it.
okay. And
You
I
shouldn't
didn't
write it,
respond
Coretta. If you don't want it highlighted, baby,
to
don't write it.
But I love this comment because I had a friend, Chris, he got out the first time I got out. Like, we both did 10 years at the same time. It was crazy. My brother's best friend. And so when I picked him up, and I got out maybe 6 months, 7 months before he did. So I was a little bit acclimated, got my car and stuff. And I said, "Do you want to go out to the movie store?" He's like, "Yeah, but I got to go. I got to go meet this chick." I said, "Already?" He was like, "Say, check it out. She was my little boo. She was my little girlfriend officer when I was locked up." I said, "Oh, okay." So we went to Cheddar's. He goes, "Now look, I want you to stay in the car. And if it don't go well, I'm just going to come right back out. And if it's longer than 15 minutes, then you can just go on to the movies or whatever." I said, "Okay." Baby, it wasn't even 10 minutes. He whoop, whoop, and came right back out. I said, "What happened?" He said, "What in the hell was wrong with me?" And I said, Was she mean?" Or she was like, I just looked at her and sat down, and I was like, "Why did I do this? I'm not attracted to her. She does. This is not. I don't even remember her looking like this and sounding like this. Like, what in the hell was I thinking?" And we drove off. I think he told her, "I'm going to go to the bathroom," and he
Oh
left.
man. Oh man, he, he just left her sitting there.
I mean, those. Hey, let me tell you something, and y'all know. If you know, you know. Coretta probably remembers this too. Them girls that be writing pen pals that they were scamming, they would get in trouble if they were using other people's picture. That's fraud. Well, they'd still
I
do
had
it
a
anyway.
roommate that used her daughter's picture. Side
God.
note, all seriousness.
Well, why did this girl do this? She'd been using some other picture, like drastically different identity. And she was an unattractive woman. And she really actually kind of liked her pen pal. And he was doing the thing, he was taking care of her. And she says, "Okay, let's have the visit." And he comes in and sits down, and she got her little snack. And he was like, confused, right? And she was like, "I just wanted to be honest with you. This is who I really am. And I felt like we had created a bond. They had been writing, and I just want you to love me for me. And I'm sorry I did that, but I just was so desperate to get, somebody to talk." And he was like, "Oh, I understand. I understand. And I'm so glad, I'm here." And he was like, "Do you want another bag of chips or whatever, right? And I'm going to run to the bathroom."
Mm.
He left.
He left her sitting there.
And he left
That
her
happened
sitting.
on an episode of Wentworth.
Did it?
Yes. Yeah. She sent somebody else's picture to him. She was talking
God.
to him. She fell in love with him. Yeah, the same thing. Same story. We got to wrap this up.
I'm
We're running
sorry. I just,
out.
I got caught
Guys,
up on
all
story.
y'all, thank y'all so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking, sharing the podcast. If you're listening, wherever you hear your favorite podcasters, please leave us a review. I have people messaging me this week saying, "Hey, I left you a review on Spotify. Anthony, I see you. Thank you for that review." And we appreciate those so much. Any last thoughts, Toonch?
I'm just not happy about that guest appearance on the Kardashians, but I'll work through it.
You were going to have to, honey. You cannot expect for Gypsy Rose to do what you
Unrealistic expectations.
Yes.
Out with us on the